Is the biggest aviation mystery of all time, the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370, about to be solved?
For nearly a decade, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 has haunted aviation history as one of its greatest unsolved mysteries.
The flight path did a 90-degree turn to the left and disappeared into the vastness of the Indian Ocean. We don't know the motivation for doing this. We don't know.
No distress call, no clear wreckage, and no definitive answers. Only fragments of debris and endless speculation.
How can you lose a jetliner? How can it vanish in thin air?
Governments searched, experts theorized, and families agonized. But the truth remained elusive.
Experts around the world are studying satellite images from Asia. New images that show something floating in the ocean. So are these images part of the answer, or will they just deepen the mystery?
Now, advances in technology may be shedding new light on the tragedy. Artificial intelligence has re-examined satellite images captured in the days after the aircraft vanished. Photographs that may have been overlooked or dismissed at the time. What they reveal could reshape the investigation into MH370's fate. The unsolved mystery of MH370. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. It was supposed to be a routine red-eye, just under 7 hours of flying time. On board were 239 souls, passengers, crew, families, and children. But less than an hour into its journey, MH370 slipped off the radar, both literally and figuratively, triggering one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern aviation history. At first, the disappearance seemed like a technical glitch. Air traffic controllers expected the plane to check in as it crossed into Vietnamese airspace, but no contact came. Attempts to hail the aircraft failed. Then came the realization. The plane had not crashed where expected, nor had it continued on its assigned path. It had simply vanished. In an era of satellites, smartphones, and global positioning, the idea that a Boeing 777 could disappear without a trace seemed unthinkable. Initial searches focused on the South China Sea, the plane's intended corridor. Naval ships, aircraft, and search and rescue teams from multiple countries joined in. But days passed with nothing to show. No wreckage, no debris, no oil slick, just silence. Families gathered at airports, clinging to hope, only to be met with growing frustration as officials offered few answers. The first real breakthrough came not from radar, but from satellites. Investigators discovered that MH370 had continued flying for hours after its last radio contact. Inmarsat, a British satellite company, detected automatic handshakes from the plane's communication system. These pings traced a broad arc across the southern Indian Ocean, thousands of miles from where the plane was last seen. Suddenly, the search area shifted from the crowded waters of Southeast Asia to one of the most remote and unforgiving places on Earth. And it began the most enormous and most expensive search in aviation history. Australia led the way, deploying ships and bringing state-of-the-art sonar to scour the ocean floor for whatever came to be known as the Seventh Ark. The underwater terrain was nothing to write home about. Mountains and trenches and ridges stretching over an area about the size of France. And nothing yet, even after years and years of searching. In 2015, a glimmer of hope showed up. Debris identified as a part of the wing of MH370, a flaperon, washed ashore on Réunion Island. Réunion is a French territory in the Indian Ocean, located east of Madagascar and southwest of Mauritius. It was followed by more bits being found in Mozambique, South Africa, and Tanzania. Each of these bits confirmed the suspicion many had feared, that it had crashed into the Indian Ocean. But as many questions were raised as received answers, how exactly did the jet end up there? Was it pilot error or mechanical failure, or something more sinister? But in that time, the families of the victims lived in limbo. No crash site, no black boxes, but closure denied. Governments made statements, investigators published reports. However, no one managed to ascertain in convincing terms what caused the tragedy. Some officials stuck to suspicious action, maybe on the part of the captain. A frayed or coincidental incident, be it hypoxia or fire, could have resulted in catastrophic systems failure. No evidence, however, stoked a storm of speculation and theories, from the plausible to those that border on absurdity. But nearly 10 years after then, MH370 has still become the last great aviation mystery. The great irony is that such a highly sophisticated aircraft, one of the safest models ever manufactured, could just vanish without a trace large enough to find. Many came to understand that this tragedy was not just about the number of lives lost, but the reminiscences of life as it used to be, without the sober reminder that in a hyper-connected world, certain mysteries can exist. And as investigators scoured endless ocean, one overlooked detail was quietly waiting to resurface: satellite photos, taken during those desperate early months, that may have captured far more than anyone realized. Satellite images forgotten. In the frantic weeks after MH370 vanished, the world's eyes were fixed on the ocean. Governments deployed aircraft, naval vessels, and advanced sonar to scour millions of square kilometers. But in that race against time, one of the most valuable tools available, the satellites orbiting silently above, was both used and strangely overlooked. In March 2014, just days after the disappearance, France's space agency released a startling announcement. Their satellites had captured images of large objects floating in the southern Indian Ocean. Weeks later, China and Malaysia confirmed similar findings: blurry, pixelated snapshots showing what appeared to be clusters of debris. Some of the shapes were more than 10 meters long, rectangular, and oddly consistent with man-made materials. Headlines around the world described them as probably man-made. The suggestion was electrifying. Had satellites already spotted MH370's wreckage, adrift in the currents? Yet despite the urgency, those images were never properly followed up on. Search teams redirected efforts, only to find empty seas. Officials downplayed the photos, describing them as inconclusive or likely ocean garbage. Publicly, the narrative shifted away from the satellites, focusing instead on mathematical models of the plane's final path. Behind closed doors, however, intelligence agencies reportedly cataloged hundreds of such images, taken by commercial and military satellites, and then locked them away from public scrutiny. Why were they ignored? One reason may have been the overwhelming scale of the search. With thousands of possible debris objects scattered across satellite grids, verifying each one required immense resources. Another factor was political. Countries rarely reveal the true resolution of their satellites, since it exposes national security capabilities. To admit they had sharper images could compromise military intelligence, and so much of the evidence was quietly shelved, consigned to databases that the public would never see. Devastating for the families of MH370's passengers, the omission was time-critical. Debris fields quickly disperse, carried away by wind and currents. By April, what might have been identifiable wreckage in March became meaningless flotsam. Every passing day meant a loss of possible answers because no retrieval happened. Some families accused governments of hiding information deliberately, protecting secrets at the cost of truth. Again, Whether deliberate or done through the bureaucracy, such results are similar. The trail grows colder. But the photos were never really lost. Amateur sleuths and independent investigators began poring over archives released by French and Chinese space agencies. While grainy, the images did show shapes that began to look eerily regular. Straight lines, metallic reflections, and angular edges. They do not match that random chaos of ocean trash. A few scientists contended these were statistically significant, too weird to be thrown away. Yet, without the weight of official confirmation, their images are rendered little more than minor footnotes in an ever-expanding mystery. After the final search phase ended in 2018, the emergence of these forgotten snapshots took on a new perspective. The technology had undergone a tremendous upgrade. Artificial intelligence has come to enhance resolution, identify patterns, and analyze a huge amount of imagery way beyond human capability. So, all of a sudden, those neglected photos of 2014 turned from inconclusive blurs into actual raw data ready to be reinterpreted. For years, the families of the missing begged governments to re-examine the satellites. For years, they shrugged. Then, as AI and quantum computing matured, independent researchers were beginning to do what bureaucracies had failed to do: open the digital archives and ask once again, were the satellites right all along? The answer, it turned out, was hiding in plain sight. And once AI began processing the forgotten images, the story of MH370 took a stunning new turn. AI and quantum tech. By the late 2010s, the MH370 investigation had slowed to a crawl. The official search had been called off, governments had shifted their attention elsewhere, and the narrative was that the truth might never be found. Yet, technology was quietly advancing in the background. Artificial intelligence, once a futuristic concept, was now being deployed across industries, from medicine to defense. And a new generation of researchers wondered, could AI see what humans had missed? The challenge was straightforward, yet monumental. The original satellite images of suspected debris were grainy, blurred, and almost impossible to interpret. To the human eye, they looked like smudges scattered across endless waves. For years, officials had dismissed them as ocean junk. But AI thrives where humans fail, detecting faint patterns buried in noise, comparing millions of possibilities in seconds, and drawing connections across fragmented data. This made it the perfect tool for re-examining MH370's ghostly trail. A group of independent analysts, armed with advanced machine learning algorithms, began revisiting the archives. Their goal was simple: feed every known satellite photo into AI models trained to distinguish man-made objects from natural debris. What came back was astonishing. The AI flagged dozens of images previously written off, highlighting sharp edges, rectangular outlines, and consistent reflections, all hallmarks of manufactured material. To put it plainly, the computer was screaming that this wasn't just random trash. But AI didn't stop at recognizing shapes. Using computational photography techniques, researchers enhanced the resolution of those 2014 images, effectively deblurring the scenes. What emerged from the noise were outlines that looked disturbingly familiar. Panels, fuselage fragments, even what some experts argued could be wing sections. While none of these could be confirmed without physical retrieval, the visual similarities were too strong to ignore. Quantum computing added a new dimension of power. By processing data from an impressive number of satellites simultaneously, researchers had been able to simulate models of ocean drift with a precision never before achieved. They deep-dived into the debris locations flagged by AI and ran billions of permutations to ascertain where the wreck sites would likely have originated. Yet again, simulations pointed in the same direction: the southern Indian Ocean region, just outside the original official search area. The results were a bombshell. For some time now, the official story has been that MH370 was lost somewhere along this so-called seventh arc, a band of ocean west of Australia, calculated from Inmarsat satellite pings. AI-enhanced images, though, suggested something a little different: that it crashed further north than thought, in a patch of ocean so large and so deep it had practically never been seen. If this fact were so, then it could mean that wreckage has always been right there, hidden behind nothing but bad math and bureaucratic inertia. Skeptics scoffed and noted how AI could invariably hallucinate. After all, even the best machine learning systems sometimes can force order unto randomness. But that was what quietened most of the doubters. Different AI systems, trained by independent groups, kept corroborating each other's clusters, coordinates, and interpretations. And the probability that this was coincidence was thus decreasing with every passing day. For the families, bittersweet results awaited. AI was driving hope, new leads, sharper clues, possible closure. It was also a reminder of wasted years, how forsaking satellite data may have cost them answers when they were much closer to being found. Besides, the tide was changing. What was once mere pixels was beginning to be seen as potential evidence in one of the most significant aviation tragedies in the history of mankind. But if technology was finally closing in on answers, its revelations carried a human cost, one that the families could feel more sharply than anyone else. AI's double-edged impact on families. For more than a decade, the families of the 239 people aboard MH370 have lived suspended between hope and despair. With no wreckage, no flight recorders, and no definitive answers, many endured a cycle of mourning without closure. The sudden emergence of AI-enhanced satellite images was more than a technical milestone. It reopened old wounds while offering the first tangible signs of long-awaited answers. For relatives, the implications cut both ways. On one side was validation. Many had long argued that evidence had been overlooked or dismissed by officials eager to move on. The newly processed images seemed to prove their suspicions correct. Clues had always been there. That confirmation was bittersweet, offering vindication while reminding them how long they had been ignored. But the images also rekindled anger. If AI could identify man-made debris in 2014 photos now, why wasn't it done then? Why had governments spent hundreds of millions on searches that missed likely areas? For some, the revelation was less about science's triumph than about bureaucracy's failures, poor coordination, slow adoption of technology, and years of unnecessary suffering. Apart from the grievous personal implications, the finding was undoubtedly a very strong advocate for aviation safety reforms. The earlier reforms triggered by MH370 included more frequent mandatory position transmissions and the immediate development of systems to track aircraft movements in real time. The AI discovery struck a greater vein. Traditional investigative methods may not be sufficient in the digital age. Aviation collects much data from radar, satellites, and communications to weather systems that no human team can analyze fully. AI soon can. This opens a flurry of questions about regulatory issues. Should AI be put in at the beginning of the investigations? Who shall oversee its use? Airlines, international bodies, or independent watchdogs? And what guards are needed to prevent misinterpretation or over-reliance on algorithms? AI may have provided possible debris, but it has opened up questions on its accuracy and accountability as well. Families want answers, albeit quick ones. They are interested in answers that can be taken to the bank. This case has quite an emblematic weight. Aviation is called the safest among all means of transport. Every disaster drives reforms to avoid future tragedies. Instead, the disappearance of MH370 with botched data and delayed analyses may well make the usage of AI the greatest advancement in aviation safety since the black box. The lesson is stark. When the next aircraft disappears or veers off course, AI tools must be deployed immediately, scouring every image and dataset before vital clues fade. But the battle is still more personal for the family. They want more than just advances in technology. They want the truth. AI may have brought them closer, but it also underscored a haunting reality. The answers may have always been there, hidden in plain sight. The entire story behind MH370 may finally leave itself written both in tragedy and transformation. For the families, a fight for memory and closure, and aviation, a call to ensure that no plane and no group of loved ones ever vanishes into silence again. However, while AI reshaped the family's journey, it also altered something else entirely, the narrative that had been dominated for years by conspiracy theories. From conspiracies to credible leads. When Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 disappeared on March 8, 2014, the silence left behind was deafening. With no wreckage or flight recorder, speculation flourished. Governments issued cautious statements, search crews chased faint signals, and aviation experts offered guesses. For families desperate for answers, the lack of clarity was unbearable, and into that void conspiracies rushed. One of the earliest theories claimed the plane had been hijacked and flown to a secret location, perhaps to be repurposed as a weapon. Others speculated it had landed on a remote island in the Indian Ocean, or that the United States had shot it down near its Diego Garcia naval base. As searches dragged on without results, these stories spread further. Technical conspiracies soon followed. Online forums buzzed with claims of cyber hijacking, hackers supposedly taking control of the jet remotely. Some argued Boeing had hidden override systems, while others insisted the Inmarsat ping arcs used to track the plane were misinterpreted, or worse, manipulated. With no proof to disprove them, every theory seemed possible. Uncertainty allowed these ideas to thrive. Families split into camps, some convinced of technical failure, others of government cover-ups. Trust in official investigations eroded further after Malaysia's slow and disorganized response. The longer the mystery persisted, the stronger the conspiracies became. That changed when artificial intelligence re-examined satellite images from 2014. For the first time, the discussion shifted from "what if" to "what is." Machine learning combed through the grainy photos and flagged objects in the southern Indian Ocean that human analysts had once dismissed. These weren't random blotches. AI identified straight lines, rectangular shapes, and reflective surfaces, patterns consistent with man-made debris. Although they cannot be definitive proof of a crash site, the photographs provided the most credible physical evidence for a number of years. Analysts estimated the probability to be high that at least some of the fragments were from the missing plane. For the families, the effect was immediate. Speculation gave way to substance. Theories about hijackings, hidden islands, or military shoot-downs suddenly became less likely. Instead, evidence indicated a far simpler and tragic reality, that MH370 had gone down in one of the most remote and least forgiving corners of the Indian Ocean, just beyond where the original searches had taken place. The weight of this pivot went well beyond shutting down rumors. The families demanded search vessels to return to the coordinate points AI had flagged, arguing that new tools would be able to succeed where earlier attempts had failed. Theirs was a call echoed by members of the aviation community, stating that AI mapping and enhanced ocean drift models would pinpoint the location of the wreck. One of the effects, perhaps the most profound, was psychological. Conspiracy theories have given families unrealistic hope that their loved ones may still be alive. The AI results, however, pushed them closer to acceptance. Painful though it may be. Science was not able to promise closure, but offered something no conspiracy theory ever could: accountable leads based on evidence. Today, the drama of MH370 stands as an example of how inventions can rewrite a narrative. There were wide gaps of uncertainty around the story, and so for many years, one speculated wildly. However, AI is unraveling all fictions today with data. The mystery of MH370 may finally be closer to resolution, but the search for truth is far from over. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's biggest unsolved stories. And don't click away just yet. The next video on your screen will take you even deeper into mysteries you won't believe.